We're back,
second
episode 2.
episode.
Well, 602, but 2 of the latest
3.
version. We
Yeah,
might actually
this would
turn this into a thing again.
yeah. I got some messages on my Substack, everyone from people who are excited to have the podcast back. So that was very encouraging. Because when you do a podcast, you're basically talking to a non-responsive,
Shouting into the void.
non-responsive ether that you're hoping. It's like the opposite of Reddit.
Or the opposite of LinkedIn.
Yeah. So we're back, and so I think what we want to talk about today, and some people who follow us may have seen it, but we have talked about CS2's maturity framework. And so we want to talk about that a bit later and kind of give a common use case example as we talk through it. But before we jump into that, I'm going to talk about what's kind of trending right now in AI. And one thing that it caught my eye last week, and I know it's kind of been discussed across the team and on LinkedIn, and Salesforce kind of came out with their press release talking about like the headless CRM and how that's the future. And I think Slack being kind of the place where sales teams will spend a majority of their time.
I'm smiling because all I can think about with Headless is, like those costumes where you can just put your shoulders up here and put your, like a Halloween costume, someone walking around with no head. It is an interesting choice for terminology, but we'll roll with it.
Yeah, I feel like I saw someone say something else that was a bit better than headless. Did Crissy say something? It's like, I don't know. Maybe topless didn't really make the cut,
Yeah, topless doesn't sound good either. I'm sorry. That's not safe for work. Yeah. But yeah, what's interesting for me is that we have Salesforce at CS2, but I'm going to caveat this with a massive point here is like we actually don't use it for our CRM. It's a bit of a legacy thing for us where we have our client contract data in there, and we have each month a contract record for each of our clients. And so we really only use it for that. We use HubSpot for CRM, although there's a bit of nuance there as well. And we're not the same as our clients, right? All of our clients, B2B tech companies, a lot more salespeople, growing fast, need a lot more infrastructure, architecture, reporting, and stuff like that compared to what we need. So like we can't compare what we have versus what our clients need. But I have been using Salesforce in a headless, quote unquote, headless capacity over the last few months, ever since we connected Claude Code through the CLI to Salesforce. Anytime we need to update contracts, anytime we need to get reporting on those contracts, I just go straight to Claude Code, open up my Salesforce folder, and just start talking to Claude Code. And I'll be like, okay, I need to create these contracts in Claude Code for this new client, and it will just go and do it. And so it is interesting. I've been doing that for a few months, and now they come out, and that's kind of like their big business strategy, what they're betting the business on. And what I'm curious about is, it works for us, but like right now, obviously, that's not how most people are using Salesforce. There's still salespeople going in there. There's still like reporting in there, things like that. But like, is there going to be a tipping point where it goes in that direction? I mean, they're betting yes, and that I don't disagree with them. But what's more interesting to me is like what is between now and then, and what's going to change, and what's going to kind of force people in that direction, and what's going to need to be figured out if you are to completely operate in that way. So I don't know, Crissy, we haven't even really talked about it between us that much. So what's your take?
It's a bit of a tough one. I can see how potentially over time that the CRM would become more of like a database, a central database, rather than a place where your sales teams like live, because I think it's already been kind of going that way depending on what the role is. Like each team has like kind of a specific tool that even sits out of Salesforce that they're working in day to day. So for example, like a SDR, they're more likely to spend more of their time out of a sales engagement platform. Right now, who knows how long that will last, really. Just with all the go to market engineering, they may not even need to do that. But that's already kind of been on the rise.
Hmm.
And then, uh, I mean, we even have a client that I work closely with, and every time they open up an opportunity, they generate like a Slack channel, like deal room. And I know we've worked
Hmm.
with partners that kind of do that as well. I was thinking that the admin and cleanliness and feasibility of that is like kind of would be hard to manage too if you just have like a ton of opportunities. So but there, I think one thing that Salesforce is a CRM and HubSpot too, likely, but there's not like a great collaborative nature to it as well. And we think about what it takes to like kind of close deals. Like I can see why they would kind of need something like that. I think Chatter tried to do that. And no one really picked that up. But um, so I can see where, and now with a bunch of tools where you can post alerts and things like that into Slack and even send over leads that they need to action, and they have extensions into the places where they're making their calls and emails to prospects. Like I can see a world where they wouldn't even need to log into a CRM. However, it is
Well,
kind of a good kind of grounding place where you still use that CRM, but you take that data from the CRM and post it in the places where they are. So I don't see a CRM going away. It's more just how the different teams and are leveraging tools or getting that information to places where they're most effective is probably what the future will be.
yeah, all of those needs are still there, right? You
Yeah.
need data, you
Yeah.
need analytics, you need process, regardless of whether agents are facilitating that, people are facilitating that, agents are reading the data and reporting, or if humans are reading, like you still need the
Mhm.
data. The interesting thing that we've experienced at CS2, so Claire on our team has been building out Notion agents, and one of them, which has been super useful, is it scans all of our Slack, and anytime, like for a bit more context, a lot of our clients are on long-term retainer-based type contracts, and often they're very flexible. Right, you can cancel, you can upgrade, you can expand, whatever. The amount of work that you need from CS2 month to month. So they there's always like conversations happening across like multiple channels in Slack with our team discussing, oh, this client might need more, this client might need less, all of that. And it's always been really hard to like keep on top of all of that. Like really hard. Like you try and create a deal in HubSpot, which is our CRM, and but then every time there's like someone's like, oh, maybe this client needs more. It's like, are you going to create a deal? Like, let me know when it's like kind of a bit closer. And then it's just it was just a massive pain. And like we would never track it very well. Now the Notion agent's just scanning everything every day. It finds any conversation in this category. It updates the Notion database with that. As more conversations happen, it will update the same record in that database with like, here's the latest on that. Here's another conversation. It will like open and close those different records. Um, right now, we've just built it in Notion to get that list for our expansions, and we've actually not done it in HubSpot. I would say though, most companies, unlike us, where they've got more reliance in their CRMs than we do, you would want that in your CRM or your core, data set that you're using for reporting. But for us, it's fine in Notion for now as we're building it out. And that's another way of being headless, because it's like a human doesn't have to go in and type in that the stuff around the deal in a platform. The
Yeah.
agent is just writing to a database. The interesting thing that then comes out of that is all you need is a database, right? Like
Yeah.
take our really simple use case. And again, we're not the same as our clients, so they need more than us. For us, we just need a simple database. The Notion database is fine. We can see that it's getting updated. We don't need it to particularly be in a CRM type database, right? So and For our clients, though, there's other benefits to having that data being written back into CRM. But it does kind of maybe open the question of, if everything is completely headless one day, and I don't think we're like that, we're like super close to that yet for most companies. But if it is the case, what is better about the underlying architecture of a CRM database than what you could potentially just build in just a much cheaper database tool, right? So does it erode the value in Salesforce versus just getting like the cheapest database you can and just building whatever kind of infrastructure you need around that, like all the joins, the data relationships, any process, etc. Now, if you're a company that's got a lot built out in your CRM, that's the reason why Salesforce and HubSpot are very sticky products, because you have a lot built out there.
Mm-hmm.
Be a massive pain going from A to B, like going from that database to like stripping everything out and going to another one. But if you're a startup, maybe you track things in a more simple database, and it takes you longer before you need the more complicated, sophisticated version in a CRM. I don't know. Open questions. I haven't got my full take on this yet, but I think at some point things will probably become more and more headless. Whether you get to full, for most companies, I don't know. And for most companies that are scaled, there's going to be a lot of things in the way of getting there, and it's going to take a long time. But does seem to be a path that will get more well trodden over time from at least smaller companies, I think. Anyway, yeah, do you agree with that? I don't know.
I do in some ways, and I don't in other ways, because I do think that having that structure around your data, so like maybe it's not even a CRM per se, but like a CDP or something, but having something that can handle a magnitude of data, that can handle an account structure, so you can see like people that are kind of associated with each other for contacts, and knowing how to designate accounts. Like, and I know those are all tables that you can build out. Um, but then I think
But you're
about also,
buying the relationships between those
yeah, you're buying,
tables
and then like
as
the
a product.
tools,
The
like,
value is you would have to build it all yourself, and that would,
right.
even if it is just the core underlying. That's a good point. It's a very good
And
point,
then
actually.
also just like how much feeds into that in terms of like the concept of like managing an opportunity and financial data that then hooks up into your financial systems and keeping those up to date. So,
Integrations, change
yeah.
tracking,
So
snap
you're
like.
gonna like, I don't see that like happening within like a Notion per se, as much as I don't want to say that, but maybe
No,
for a small
definitely
company,
not.
but
Well,
but I
like
just,
companies like us, though, the ones that
companies like
probably
us
weren't
though,
getting that
no,
much
like,
value out of
but think
Salesforce,
about
like
it.
you
Like
don't need it.
we have a seller of one, because as much as our team upsells and things
That's
like
me.
that, and that's you. Yeah. And there's a reason why it's an overhead, right? Because that's a not like, but as you kind of scale and you have multiple sellers and things like that. So
I
I
mean, and we
think of
still
it
have Salesforce, so I haven't even jumped
exactly.
yet anyway.
I think there's a reason why it's like worked well for a long time, but it's just whether or not I really think of that platform as a CRM, like actually a salesperson managing the relationships, versus more of a data platform that then is like a central hub. And maybe it's not Salesforce to do that, but when I think of a lot of clients, it would be really hard to like break from that into something else where they're still going to have to build that structure anyway.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
guess
not
there's
saying that's
two
not going to
questions.
happen. It
It's
could still
like,
happen.
yeah, I guess to like be clear, there's like two questions. There's, are CRMs going to go to be more headless? That's one
Hmm.
question, and I think the answer is
Yeah.
even before AI, it happened. To your really good point, it's like sales engagement tools, other tools, kind of like composable tech stacks, and then the next question is, does that devalue the need for a CRM? That's unclear. Maybe
Hmm.
at the edges it does, but the movement towards headless had already started pre-AI, and it's probably just going to keep on accelerating more AI, because you're going to have agents that will handle data updates, things like that, reading the data, building kind of reporting, analyzing, etc., without humans. And I guess I guess the definition of headless is an interesting one too, because it just means that like humans aren't like agents are still going in there and accessing. Like
Right.
it's not like nothing's happening. Like it's just not a human. Um, so yeah, it's a really interesting topic. We'll keep following it. Has a lot of implications, but I think maybe the takeaway is um, have a plan for how you try and figure out the processes that you have in your CRM, what is being updated, what needs to happen, and more of that can be automated. And actually, probably leads us on nicely onto our maturity framework, because this is then laying out the groundwork for how you can leverage AI and these different processes to move through 4 different levels of maturity. So let's jump over to that now.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so maybe at the end, when did we come up with our maturity frame? I'm like time is like a very abstract thing right now in terms of like when how much is
For a
happening in
few
AI.
months, I
Few
think,
months,
and a
but
few
at the start
iterations.
of the end of the year, start of beginning of the year, I think like even just in the since January, AI has like kind of exploded, and I think we were starting to see kind of a confusion within our clients, but also in the market on like basically we want to use AI. We want to use it in our go to market like practices, go to market ops, but how do we do that? And also we needed like kind of a grounding framework to say like, well, there's kind of different ways that you can, and some of them take more maturity or work maturity or advancement using AI um, to get there. And so we came up with a maturity framework that has 4 levels of how you can leverage AI within different use cases across like your processes. So not just like a maturity framework where some people say like, say all of your marketing operations, go to market operations, what level are you in based on how you're approaching it. This is more of a framework to ground like, okay, we have a particular use case. At what level should and could and how you can adopt AI. Because in some cases you might have a use case where maybe you only want to mature to like a level 3 because having a level 4 doesn't make sense, or it just doesn't kind of solve that use case like particularly well. It's like a over engineering kind of aspect, like you're trying to use something way more advanced than what you should. So I want to talk through those levels. I also wanted to talk through a use case along with Charlie around account research and like prioritization and context within that these levels, so we can paint a picture of what we mean, because just to make it more clear. And I find this to be a really kind of, I always say it's kind of like a grounding kind of framework, because I think even for a lot of folks who are a bit like unsure of, how to leverage AI, but also like what that means. Like, how am I actually using it to solve these use cases, or what's the different ways I can advance? I think it's a really good kind of thing you can kind of anchor on and think about. And we use it within our workshops with our clients, and I find it to work really well too. And our team does too, who are leading those workshops. In terms of the different levels, we'll probably bring it up on the screen. I maybe we can add that in or share. I, we think about the 4 levels. The first level is using AI as a thought partner, and so if you think about bringing up Claude or ChatGPT, this is where a human actually like asks or a question to the AI will respond, but then the human is still doing a majority of that action and work with that. And so there's really no autonomy happening here with AI. It's really just like a manual. You're asking it, it's giving you back. You're then deciding how to action. So a lot of it doesn't mean this isn't valuable, but this is just like kind of the entry level. It's where a lot of people are probably leveraging AI for some things, where it's helping them plan, it's helping you like answer better questions based on your data. It's maybe even doing some ad hoc analysis on data that you're feeding into it, or helps you think about like problems. A lot of people use AI in this way in their personal lives, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to Carmel next weekend. Can you help me find the 5 best restaurants to go to for brunch? And then it gives you a list, and then you go and book your
Sounds
favorite
like
one.
you've asked AI that in the last few days, giving away vacation plans. So
And then, or maybe I have in the past, or San Francisco, And so that's a great use case. Where there's context is you're giving it context within the chat. Um, and where humans like role is like you're really prompting it to do work. And this doesn't mean this is chat is only level one. There's a lot of things that you can actually do within chat that actually goes beyond level one. But this is really just means like you're just using AI as a thought partner. So in terms of um so we want to give an example to kind of ground this. So um when it comes to um the account research and prioritization, um basically you can like have a conversation with AI. You can say, here are all, I'm thinking about, uh uh doing a project where I want to say like track signals on accounts. You can feed it a bunch of information about like who you're targeting, what your target accounts are like, potentially what past signals you've had. Put that into a conversation with AI. It can give you feedback on how to maybe best, what signals are maybe the best for you to look at, especially if that's something you're not actually knowing where to start. Um, and then it can figure out and kind of rank those signals, and then you can take all that those findings of like, okay, I'm going to actually use these 5 signals, and then you're going to set up a process to actually action on those 5 signals. So you're doing a majority of the work. It's really just helping point you in the right direction and being a partner. Yeah, anything you wanted to add on that one, Charlie?
no, I think we'll get into the other ones.
Yeah. The rest, yeah, and I'll kind of this is the next phases are kind of where we see like this is where your team would start to be more advanced in how you would leverage AI, beyond being using AI as a thought partner, which is basically like table stakes and the bare kind of minimum, really. So the second would be we call it using AI as an assistant, so an AI assistant. So this is where a human will start a task, but then the AI helps it execute. Um, and so there's still not really like much autonomy you're giving AI here at all, because the human is starting every task, and then the AI is kind of like guiding them through it. So, but in terms of where this goes beyond that, this is where you're giving AI access, like say through the API or CLI or MCPs, to actually go and get data from your system, potentially even like make changes to actually do some work, but only as you direct it. So it's more advanced. You're getting more efficiency. You're using AI to actually do work and assess data and access your systems, but it's still not making all of those changes on its own, or deciding those changes. And a human is very much just telling it what to do. Claude Code, like a lot of the use cases shared with Claude Code, is a really good example of this, because it's all within your app, or like terminal on your computer. You're basically saying a lot of the time you're starting to use it as a planner, and then you're saying, okay, now I'm going to give you access to, say, Salesforce. Go and read this data. Then you can tell it like, hey, I actually want you to change the ownerships of all of those accounts, and then you can give it right access, and it can update those. But really, you're just using it as an assistant to help you get some work done. It's not really doing it's doing maybe some of that strategic thinking and planning with you, but you're really going in with like, I need this task done. I'm going to use AI to help me do it, and it's going to help me do it in a faster, better fashion than maybe if I had done it on my own.
Yeah, I think
Um,
they like you said, for a lot of the use cases that people see online around Claude Code, I think it sits in this category until like recently, where people have got a bit better at automating things with Claude Code. But it's so some of the key things around it is it's not always on, right? You have to
mhm.
start the task. Like it's not just going to go do something. You need to say, I want to start this. So in the account research context, you go, I want to research this account or this section of accounts. So you would go into Claude Code, right? You might have a project with some context already in it that may be on how you want to handle the research or not. You can, like you mentioned, have integration, so you can be pulling information in from your CRM, from enrichment platforms. You can do web research. You can build things, right? Like you can build decks, you can build presentations, Google Sheets, anything that you can build like through any of the other integrations. You can update systems like CRM with that data, but you're hand holding it through the way. And like skills are a good example of this in tools
Yeah.
like Claude Code, right? Like it is a skill that you initiate that has a process, but you are having to go through that process all the way. Like one of the things that we've talked about is our AI analyst. That is still like very much level 2. We're triggering it with a skill. We're going through the process. We're doing the analysis, and then we get the output, and then we present the output back. Awesome use case, and it's where a lot of people are finding a ton of value because as a knowledge worker, it's helping you perform your work better and faster. Like literally our internal AI channel is full of examples of like, we did this analysis, we built this thing for a
Mhm.
client, and we've leveraged Claude Code to like build in HubSpot or build in Salesforce or audit these systems, do all this data analysis. It is amazing, but it's still level 2, and there are more levels to the game. So if I could pick up kind of where we left off then. So level 3, this is we're going to have the image on the screen, but so you can see it, but AI automation. So the way that we describe this is quote unquote like production grade automation with AI steps. So there's some of the things that how we compare this is like autonomy, tool access, objective, the context layer, and human role. So when it comes to autonomy, this is, it's kind of it's in the name, it's automated, right? That it doesn't need someone to come in and say, I want to do this. Let's handhold it all the way through. You have set up a predefined, automation pipeline or series of steps or workflow that has a trigger or runs on a batch without you as a person or any human having to go and like or say, I want to start this process. So
Mhm.
if we take our account research, you could have like new account gets created trigger, and then we're going to trigger this into the automation steps. Now, there could be plenty of steps in that automation that have nothing to do with AI. But the idea here is that at least one of them has an AI step or more than one. And this could be, right, like in the account research context, it could be go and do AI web research, right? So an
Mhm.
agent is triggered to go to the company's website, go do research there, go find signals on the account, do that research, summarize that research, report back to the steps in the automation. It could be summarize a brief, or in my signals that I was talking about on the podcast last week, it could be go find those signals, now summarize them and pull out from that all those job postings like really interesting data points that are useful for our sales team. That's AI completing a step in a predefined automation. And the whole point of this is that each of those steps, you've had to build the requirements, understand what you want to do, predefine those steps, write whatever prompts that you need for AI in those steps. And AI will then run on that predetermined pipeline.
Yeah.
And the objective here is just to automate recurring work, right? If you know that SDRs, every time they get a lead, they have to go do this research, go to the website, go check out this thing, write it back into CRM. and that was really hard to do pre-AI, then now you can build an automation that has AI in it. So there's like essentially, like if you imagine steps in a workflow, there is a node of AI doing something that you couldn't have done before. Now, the thing that sometimes hold this back, and we could talk about level 4 in a minute, is that you have to build that, and if you ever need to go and update the automation and the AI step, you have to go back into it and update it. It's not like a self-improving system. It needs you to, it's like a data pipeline that you need to come back in and improve over time and monitor. So that's where the human role is, like you're monitoring it, you're looking at the output, then you're going back and you're like, refining that prompt. Like if I go back to the signal, like job description signal, every week I'm going back to that, looking at it, going, oh, actually it missed this. It wasn't summarizing it this way. It missed this point. Now I have to go back into the prompt and write the prompt again and kind of reinforce it. It isn't goal oriented. It doesn't understand the goal. It just understands the task.
Right.
So,
I think one thing to note, like go-to-market operators, like we already have been doing setting up a ton of automation. It's just now we can leverage AI within that automation and leveraging a lot of different tools to then help us do that automation. And it can be done based on a trigger. It can be scheduled batches within like Clay, where you can feed in accounts or contacts. It can have it go out and do you can leverage a Claygen to go and find some research, and then you can set up steps to then automate messaging and so forth. And so I think this is a place too where you can look at, okay, well, what are we already doing in an automated fashion, and how can we now leverage AI to just rebuild that, but then make it
better.
Better, smarter,
more
efficient.
We talked about it last week, right? And this is the thing that is going to trip a lot of people up. A lot of people are going to go back into automation that they've built in the past and replace it with AI, but it might actually do a worse job. We talked about this, right? It's a probabilistic system. It isn't like a if then that logic, although you could try and make it do that. So there's plenty of things that still just need to be deterministic step in your automation. But use AI for those like harder to perform tasks, right? Like the job description mining for interesting data. In the past, to do that, you would have to say, if job description contains the word like, by CLM, then do whatever with that data. But like if for some reason they wrote it slightly differently, it wasn't going to pick that up. But now AI can reason across that text and understand and see the patterns that just kind of like a hard-coded automation step can't. So that is where bringing structure and clarity to unstructured data is where AI shines in a lot of these automations. So make sure you're using it in the right way.
Or when we think about our processes, sometimes our automation is doing like a step one for like a whole process. And there's usually maybe like a human in the loop somewhere there, where like now it's like, okay, we can actually do step one, but step two where that human was doing something, but now AI can do it a bit better. And then maybe even step three, where then it was also then handed over to another human. So I think with this kind of with AI, it also expands out more that you can automate and feel confident doing that than what you could do before.
Yeah. So then if we move on to step 4, there's a few key differences between level 3 and level 4. Level 4, number 1 is it's given a goal, not necessarily a pre-written step-by-step automation. So it's given a goal, and I can explain that in a bit more. And the other distinguishing factor is it then can self-improve in relationship to that goal. So if you think about our previous one, to improve that automation where, say, you go, new account, do research, that research step, to improve that, you would have to go back and write that prompt again. Once you get to level 4, which is a more autonomous AI agent, you give it the goal, I want you to prioritize these accounts for sales. And you can give it some kind of cadence, like every week, give every rep 10 accounts, whatever. But you give it the goal, and you're not prescribing exactly how it achieves that goal. So you give it access to tools, you tell it, you can give it some guidelines on, these are the type of things to look for, like go look at these fields, go do this research, look at signals, blah blah blah. But it is going to then decide, these are the 10 accounts I want to give to that sales rep, and it's going to give them to the sales rep. It's going to look to see if those turn into meetings and pipeline opportunities and closed one, and refine its approach without a human in the loop having to refine it. And of course, there can always be a bit of both. Like, a human can improve the agent too,
Yeah.
but it is able to improve itself when it's a true autonomous AI agent, and
Yeah.
it's more goal oriented, and it is able to leverage the tools that it has without you fully prescribing how to leverage those tools. So an example, one of the clients that I'm working with right now, they have Actively AI, which is a way to, basically what it does is it will sits on top of your Salesforce. It looks at all your account data and context. It can do some research on the account, and it will give each sales rep a certain amount of accounts every week, and find the contacts for those accounts, write emails based on the context, and push it into Gong, and then the sales rep picks those up and just runs with it. Now, that is an autonomous agent because you're not prescribing exactly which accounts and how to prioritize accounts. You're saying, like, these are the type of accounts we want to go after. This is what we generally care about. But it is then reviewing all of the context on those accounts and then deciding week over week which ones to prioritize, and then learning what's happening, versus, us building a very prescriptive pipeline for that. Now, what I will say is that the jury's still out on what is better. What is actually really interesting on a lot of this stuff is, like, is level 3 in some of these use cases better than level 4? And I think we'll all learn this over time. So with this client in particular, we are also running level 3 account research, where we're finding signals, we're using AI to find and summarize and prioritize signals, and then we're writing that to the account, and then we're going to start having reps pick those up as well as the ones defined by Actively. And then, because the client is using our Project Insight lifecycle model, we're able to see, okay, these are the life cycles of pipeline that was generated by Actively versus non-actively. Is it providing a lift in conversion? Both of these, level 3 and level 4, has the same goal ultimately, and one of the goals is to remove all of that time wasted from sales reps to choose accounts, right? Like, dig around Salesforce, research, choose an account, find contacts, all of that manual busy work is gone. They don't have to do that anymore. So that's a massive win. But what you really want to see is then a lift in conversion rates from agent chosen accounts and this more deterministic level 3 automation chosen accounts. And we're going to test these side by side versus accounts that sales reps just chose themselves in those 3 categories, and see which performs better. And that's going to be really interesting. We're currently in the midst of that, and it's been really interesting. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, anything I missed from that, Crissy, in terms of autonomous versus autonomous AI agents versus automation?
I think the only thing with, like, the AI agents is, I think it's still, like, to your point, in some, practical, could we use an agent for this use case? And when I
Yeah, good
say, and
point. Yeah,
it's, I think it needs to be big enough as well. It can't be just like a simple task and you're like building out a custom agent for that. It's like trying to say you want a really smart director level person to manage, I don't know, creating campaigns in Salesforce or something. Just doesn't really
yeah.
work. So,
You need the
um,
right tool for the job, right?
yeah,
And one
I
point that
think
you
also,
brought up as well is
yeah,
buying off the shelf
yep.
versus building yourself. So why don't you dig into that for level 3 versus level 4, what you're seeing with clients?
Yeah, I think also because when you're building out an agent, well, one, there's a lot of infrastructure around, like, um, how to get that agent to work, give it access to the tools that you need it to, hosting and everything, maintenance. Because at that point, once you start to build out like an agent, you're really, like, that's like a product that you have to like maintain. It's a person, it's a person per se, and you need to treat it like
Guardrails,
you need
permissions.
permissions, guardrails, constant like kind of monitoring. So yes, it is autonomous, and yes, it's self-improving, but there's still humans that need to kind of keep that kind of working. And um, I think right now the best way to kind of do that is where there is a tool or platform that helps you build those agents, and manages them, because of all of that. It would just be too much overhead, I think, for a lot of clients to try and just build that themselves. So, and there are tools that are building out places like where you can build out your own agents. HubSpot has that now. Like we gave an example of Notion agents. There's I mean, a lot of tools, active AI, like we talked about. And so I think that's like a good place to start, and seeing like what could be, appropriate. I will say with your example on the account research or anything in terms of like outbound, and if you're trying to see performance, you need to also remember that there might be like some outside things at play here that could impact performance, whether you have a really smart autonomous agent or not, especially if it comes to something in terms of like outbound. You still need a great brand. You still need great product market fit. You still need it's the same thing of like what's going to make anything more effective at your company. And so if you do, I think take kind of like you need to look at kind of comparing this in terms of not even just only performance, but and effectiveness, but even see if are there any outside kind of impacts at play here. Like maybe there's just some things like just outside of operations that's keeping this from being impactful. It's just something to note because we see that a lot as well. You can have a really awesome go to market foundation, go to market ops foundation and sales process clearly defined, stuff like that, but what comes in, like the effectiveness is what's coming into that, is also impacts what comes
Well,
out
yeah,
of it.
whenever you're doing any reporting, right, you need to try and account for the variables, right?
Yeah.
So for this client I'm talking about, we looked at actively generated life cycles versus non-actively generated life cycles. We hadn't yet built the infrastructure for the level 3 yet. So we're currently building it, but we haven't had enough data to build up yet to compare. But for the actively versus non-actively, it looked like non-actively was actually performing better. But when we looked into it, there were a lot of the deals that were created in non-actively were those like kind of like sandbag deals where
Mm-hmm.
it looked like they went outbound, but the deal was created like the day later, where the deal just kind of miraculously came out of nowhere. So it wasn't like a true
Yeah.
outbound cycle of like trying to get into contact, working the account, figuring out how to getting a meeting, da da da. It was just like, you know, maybe
Yeah, it's
came from a
not.
different source, whatever, and then just a deal came in as being incorrectly labeled. So we had to like extract those, and actively was looking, at least on par. And at this
Yeah.
point, we're happy with on par because the effort at which the deal was created through actively versus non-actively is massively different, because actively the sales rep's just sitting there waiting to get a Slack message and then agree to starting to send out the emails out of Gong, because actively does that whole process for them, whereas the non-actively, they're having to like go find the contacts, write the
Yeah.
emails themselves. So like, the CAC of those deals is very different, right? Even with the actively cost, but like if you take into account like the cost of the salesperson to do all of that account research, they're spending hundreds, thousands, millions of dollars a year. Yeah, definitely millions on salespeople
Mhm.
just like doing busy work that AI could handle. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
interesting,
comparing like for like, I think is a really good, like digging
big time.
into that. And that was a great little cue for Actively AI. They also just got like
Got some funding.
$54 million of funding or something crazy, or 48 or something.
Yeah, there's plenty of
So
other tools doing similar things, right? Like
yeah,
Rocks
yeah,
and others,
yeah,
and yeah, maybe with Claude managed agents, and
yeah.
there's other ways that you can do this without like a GTM
Hmm.
agent building tool. More just like a generic agent building tool that can work in GTM. So we're in that early stages where everyone's trying to figure it out. But
Yeah.
I think as we built out the maturity framework and we're walking clients through it, there's a lot of light bulb moments going like, okay, I need to stop thinking about maturity at a company level. I need to stop thinking, well, not stop, but when I'm thinking about go to market, I want to think about it from a use case level.
Yes.
And I want to figure out those practical use cases that can move up this levels and provide business value versus what a lot of companies are doing, which is just like this executives just saying like, just do AI.
Yeah.
We need to be more AI,
Yeah.
burn tokens. And it's like, okay, let's get practical. Let's think about the use case, figure out the use case by use case, build a roadmap around it, move them through these levels. Maybe you don't need to get to level 4 for plenty of the use cases. Maybe level 3 is better. Maybe level 2 is good because actually you don't need it automated. Like a lot of nuance here that people need to figure out, but having this framework helps you figure it out, I think. So people have feedback, let us know. Would love to hear it. We're going to talk more about it. We're literally going through this with every single one of our clients right now. So we're getting a lot of like practical feedback and roadmaps generated out of this. So more to come.
Yeah. All right. I think that's
There we go.
it for today. So we'll see you next time. But that was good. If anyone has any questions on or comments on the maturity framework, let us know. Comment. Go find my Substack. I don't know. Send LinkedIn us.
Like and subscribe.
All right. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.